Morning, Eden. Before we begin, our Chazzarah u'LeMaaseh, little bits of housekeeping. Number one is, as you just noted, today is going to be the last shir, and then we start Chazzarah for the upcoming test of the next 3 weeks. You have to look at the calendar to see the exact dates, and we'll try our best to create a schedule of Chazzarah like we've done in the past. At least cover as much ground as we can. Number one. Number two is, I mentioned earlier that I was preparing for this. I was thinking to myself that, you know what? I'm not going to start reviewing and giving practical halacha for most of Kuf Yud. Just stick to the beginning parts that's relevant, u'LeMaaseh, and the rest of the part which we spoke about on Wednesday, which talks about all these different levels of sveikus that aren't so relevant. u'LeMaaseh, I'm just going to leave it alone. Anyway, I didn't look at the booklet that they gave out with the translated Shulchan Aruch, but this morning I did because I wanted to get translation of like the different fruits that's mentioned in the beginning of the Siman, which we'll talk about. And I noticed that they didn't translate anything past Siv Gimel. So clearly, they didn't even have in mind for us to learn the whole Simon Kofir, which makes sense. As I mentioned, the first half, we mentioned this on Wednesday.
They just wanted to know like
The
the
first,
overview. Like they don't need it to
the
know the
first half
depth
of
of it.
motion is the most important because the first half talks about Davar Choshev and Davar Sheba Minyan, which we spoke about on Wednesday, which is relevant to u'LeMaaseh, which we'll talk about today. But the second half, which is about Svek Sveka, I mentioned it's not so Nageya. They just keep Sif Gimel in there, which I was going to skip, but we'll read it and translate it just because those are the basic klal of Kavua, which we explained on Wednesday. We'll review it now when we read it inside, just to know the klal. Because as I mentioned, even though it's not Nageya, it's a Taruva so much, because you're never going to be picking up a piece of meat in Costco and thinking, well, the majority of meat here on this aisle is kosher, so I'm going to eat it. You're not going to do that anyway. It's not going to be Negel Maisa, but it is a cloud, and the cloud of Kavua versus Parosh is a cloud that comes across halacha throughout across the board. I mentioned when it comes to Hilchas Pesach, when you're finding things on the floor, whether you treat it as chametz or not, it becomes negeya, and other such cases across the halacha. So it's an important inyan to know. So we'll explain that and learn that. That's number two. Number three, I was just mentioning before, I'm flirting with this idea. I'm going to reach out to the organizers at Leman Yilmadu to see if they're okay with this. That we don't do malicha, and instead of malicha, do the first four simanim of Machale, which is basically Pasakum, Bishalakum, and Cholav Akum, which are Nagel and Maisa. They're relevant to us in our kitchens, in our lives. So I think that would be more valuable to us as students than learning Malicha, which is about what they should be doing in the abattoirs that we don't work at. So again, it's up to them if they have a test already available for those simonim, or if not, if they're okay with having their rabbanim sign on a paper, which doesn't include Malicha, which they're expecting to do. So this is not a promise, but it's an idea that I'm thinking about. And if you had feedback or thoughts, I'd be happy to hear. Great. So with that, let's begin Siman Kuf test. We're going to learn both Aleph and Beis. It's a short Siman, and then we'll go to the u'LeMaaseh part. And the same thing with Kuf Yud. We're going to learn Aleph and Beis, which are the two seifim that are practical and relevant, and then go to the u'LeMaaseh, and then we'll learn Sif Gimel, considering that they translate it and give the basic klal of Kohua versus Parosh. Okay, Kuf test. Din Yavish beYavish and Isaret, the halacha of dried foods that is mixed in with dried food, u'Bay Beisifim, and this contains two subsections. Yavish beYavish, dry, and dry doesn't mean it's dry versus wet. It means it's solid. Solid versus liquid, or solid versus dissolved. So as we're going to explain in a moment in the halacha itself. So also as we explained on Wednesday, and this is what the idea is based on, then when it comes to bittul, you have bittul d'oraisa, bittul d'rabbanan. Bittul d'oraisa includes two things. Number one, the item itself is batal b'roiv. That's item number one. And item number two is the flavor has to be nullified. Flavor has to be nullified. That's d'oraisa as well. And the Chachamim, when Mashayar, our sages estimated that 60 times is the way you nullify flavor. But as we learned in theory, so flavor nullification, when it's min b'she'en minoi, requires actually nullifying the flavor. When it's min b'minoi, then the flavor is nullified automatically just by dint to the fact that you can't taste it. And therefore, that's the point here. So when it's min b'she'en minoi, you have both of those considerations d'oraisa. You have to nullify the item by majority, plus the flavor has to be nullified completely. When it's min b'minoi, both of those things are taken care of, biblically speaking, when it's arrive. Because the flavor is gone when it's arrive. because the flavor was never there to begin with, and the item is nullified by Roy. Yeah. So now you have from the Chachamim, the sages come along and say, okay, even when it's min ben minoi, I want you to nullify it as if the flavor was there, which means I want 60 to the ratio. That's only the Rabbanan. Now here what we're learning is you have a step before, which means it's min ben minoi. It's in its own kind. Plus, it's solid. It's not a liquid. It has been liquefied. So there is no flavor transference. So the tam ki'ikr is not on the table. And even if you were God forbid to cook them together, you wouldn't even have tam ki'ikr deraisa anyway, because it's min b'minoi. Right? So you're 2 steps removed from becoming an isser deraisa. Right? It's min b'minoi, plus it's not cooked together. The flavor isn't moving around, and even if the flavor moved around, it wouldn't be an isser deraisa. Okay, it's anyway bakal b'roif, and it's min b'minoi. This is where you are. This is where we are in this simon. So let's read. A piece of meat that's not worthy of being served. So it's the kind of piece of meat that would be bottle, is the main point here. It could be bottle. Correct? It would be bottle. Could be bottle. That's mixed in with other types, min bin minoi, of its own kind. Yavesh biyavesh. And everything is solid, dry, literally. Solid. It's unknown. It's the Hainu, as explains in the parentheses, to translate what that means, dry and dry. She'enim nivnal. It's not nivnal, like not liquefied. Not liquefied, not dissolved. And the prohibited item stands of itself, not giving flavor or anything else. It's just that it's mixed in with other pieces. You can't identify which one it is, but the piece is still there completely. Okay, so the deraisa, it's bottle on both accounts. No flavor transference, it's not cooked, and it's dry. Which means even for min b'she'ena minoi, deraisa, you'd have no problem here. Rabbinic, we say min b'she'ena, so it's 2 rabbinics here. Rabbinic number 1 is that when it's min bin minoi and it's cooked together, have 60 as if the flavor was transferring. Rabbinic number 2 is when it's min b'she'ena minoi, even if you don't cook it together, don't make sure you have 60 lest you cook it together. So in other words, the Chachamim only impose their Gzeira when there's 1 step away from coming to a deraisa. Right? When it's min bin minoi and it's cooked, you're 1 step away from deraisa. If we're in a minoi, it'll be a problem. Right? When it's min b'she'ena minoi, you're also 1 step away from deraisa. As soon as you cook it, it becomes deraisa because you don't have 60 yet. But when it's min bin minoi and it's not cooked, you're 2 steps away from deraisa. A, it has to be cooked together. B, it has to be the min b'she'ena minoi. And therefore, no gzeira. Because as the Shach says, even if I were to cook it now, you still wouldn't reach a deraisa. That's min b'she'ena. It's because min bin minoi. And therefore, says the Shulchan Aruch, skip the parentheses, which is a citation. Betray bottle. 1 and 2 is enough to be nullified. Shach says, it doesn't even have to be 1 and 2. It's just got to be the majority. What does that mean, majority, not 1 and 2?
Bigger piece,
So there's different ways of understanding it. Well, so one way of understanding it like this is even if the 2 other pieces are smaller than the 2 kosher pieces are smaller than the bigger piece. So you don't know which one is which. So you have 3 pieces. 1 is bigger than 2 of them. But those 2 combined are bigger than the 1. So even if the bigger one is a non-kosher one, it's nullified in the majority, even though it's not 2 times the size of the bigger one.
majority.
As long as it's a majority. Right?
Majority of pieces.
Majority, okay.
Majority
So it's actually machlekes. How you understand the shach? If it means majority of pieces even without volume, or it means also have to have volume, because you can have majority of pieces in volume, even though the other 2 pieces are smaller. So and it's not 1 and 2. For example, that's what I was giving this example before. You have 1 piece that's 10 ounces, right? And 2 pieces that are 6 ounces. So even if the 10-ounce piece is a non-kosher one, you still have majority kosher because 6 times 2 equals 12.
Right.
That's not 1 against 2. as a Shulchan Aruch phrased it. Shulchan Aruch phrased it 1 against 2. The Shach saying 1 against 2, even if it's not 2 times the size, as long as it's the majority.
12 would be good according.
Yeah.
12
There is a view of the Shach which would
12
say,
12
even if the other 2 pieces are 5 ounces, or the other 2 pieces are 4 ounces, which doesn't even reach majority, but because it's majority in number, it's also enough. There's different ways of understanding that Shach. Okay. And therefore it's permissible to eat it. Even one person can eat all 3 pieces.
We know if he's one person eating that, there is some. He is eating some. It's not for sure.
We learned this on Wednesday. The Shittas Harash. It's Chazzarah Sakosov. The Torah is the one that told you not to eat it, and Torah here tells you what the whatever it's kosher. It's not as if what makes something kosher or non-kosher. When Torah says so. So when Torah says it's nullified, Torah says it's kosher. This is true of every principle of bittul. Even bittul in 60. You have 60 ounces of chicken soup. You have an ounce of milk, and now you have 61 ounces of soup. Says Torah, the whole thing's kosher. The same Torah tells you it's not kosher, tells you it's kosher now. And therefore, even one person can eat the whole thing. But there's a little bit of a stringency here. Each one individually. Which is not as each one separately. Don't eat all 3 at once. Right? Because this is from the Rashba, I think it was, right? Which said that the Rabbanan, we want you to eat each piece separately, because we want you to have the capacity to say, while you're eating each piece, this isn't the non-kosher one. And then even when you're done and you're eating the 3rd one, you say, oh, the other one was not kosher. This is the kosher one. Even though Be'etzem Daraisa, Torah says it's kosher, you can eat all 3.
You have 3 pieces on your plate.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't eat a little piece of this and now cut a little piece of.
Oh, that's fine.
A little piece of this.
That's fine. You could do that. But you can't eat all 3 at once. Put all 3 into your fork and eat them all at once. Remember, they're very small pieces because it's chaticha she'ein really l'skabed.
One at a time means you need to eat the whole thing.
Not necessarily. It just means you shouldn't be eating all 3 in one bite. Because in each bite, you want to be able to say, this is the kosher bite.
Nice.
And it's only the Rabbanon thing, because that Isa, it's all totally kosher. Yeah?
Right,
This is exactly the Rabbanon that Rashba says it. I think it was the Rashba, right? Okay. Sorry?
That's why it needs to be one person who's eating.
That's why it could be one person. Even
Could be, or should
could be. Doesn't have to be one person. It could be one.
one person.
Even one
But
person
could
could eat
be
it.
3 people.
3 people is even better. Because now, as we're going to see in a moment, there are those who say that shouldn't be one person, right? But this opinion says, even if it's one person eating all 3, so long as in each bite you can say, it's not, I'm eating the kosher one. Although, again, the whole thing is kosher to begin with, the Rosh said, you can eat all 3 at once. There's the Chumrah, eat it at separate times. Don't eat all 3 pieces at once. There is, however, those who are more stringent. This was Tosfos, who says that it shouldn't be one person eating them all. Right? So each person can say it, not just each bite you can say the other bite is kosher. Each person can say the other piece is kosher. It's even more distance. And therefore it shouldn't be one person eating all 3 pieces of meat, or all 3 pieces of food. Says the Ramah, this should be the din lechatchila, that each piece should be eaten by somebody else. There are those who are stringent. This came from Rashi, right? If we remember from Wednesday, I believe it was Rashi. Yeah, Rashi. Thank you, Beragra. There are those who have the opinion to throw away one piece, or to give it to a guy. But Rama says the it's only a chumrah. Yeah, we're going to see in a moment from u'LeMaaseh that the Alter Rebbe seems to say that you should do this chumrah.
Not to do it, give it to a goy. To give it to a goya.
Well, not a guy.
It says a goya.
It says in English.
It says a woman. English says a woman.
The Hebrew says ovet kechavim.
It says litin the goya.
In my book, it says ovet kechavim. It could be mine's a censored version, ovet kechavim instead of goya, but I don't think it means a woman, not a man. I don't think it means a woman, not a man. I don't see a reason to give a woman, not a man. It just means maybe give it to the maid in your house. That could be.
Okay.
But it was edited. It could be censored to say ovet kechavim, not to offend the shiksa. Maybe. I don't know. That's not a very PC word. Okay. Said that it's only a chumrah, not to worry about so much. As I mentioned, we're going to see how u'LeMaaseh, the Alter Rebbe seems to imply that we should follow this chumrah. Okay. I remember correctly. We'll have a look when we get there, but I think so. All of this continues Ramah when it falls into its own kind, which is, as I explained, because it's been minoi, you're 2 steps away from daraisa. Because even if you were to cook these 3 pieces together, it still wouldn't be a daraisa because the flavor doesn't exist. And because it's 2 steps away from daraisa, meaning even if you were to fail our injunction and cook it together when you weren't supposed to, it still wouldn't be daraisa, and that's why we're allowing you to get away with this. But if it's not of its own kind, and you cannot recognize it, even if it's completely solid, hasn't been cooked together in liquefied, you need 60, because now you're 1 step away from daraisa. If you accidentally go ahead and cook it, it becomes daraisa problem because the tam kicker, and it's in a minoi.
It doesn't have the same taste.
Correct. And because it's in a minoi, it doesn't have the same taste, and therefore tam kicker daraisa. And if tam kicker daraisa, and if when you're looking at dry min b'she'ena minoi, you're 1 step away from falling into a daraisa problem, which is once you cook it, it becomes a daraisa. And therefore, machmer, that even before you cook it, you have to have 60. No difference in all this matter. Whether it's a biblical prohibition you're looking at, or it's a rabbinic prohibition you're talking about, the same thing applies. Okay, that's not our subject. Base. Okay, we're going to read again. We'll read all the way through to the end of the simon, and then we'll get to our u'LeMaaseh part. Base. So 2 non-cooked solid item, well, cooked, let's say even, but solid, non-liquefied items, that have now been nullified 1 and 2. Let's assume that it's talking about min b'minoi. Yeah. And now you cook them all together. So the Rabbanon now, at least the Rabbanon, you have an issue of tam kicker. Right? Because the Rabbanon required that even when you have min bin minoi, you should be mevatel the tam as if there wasn't bin minoi, as if it was there 60 times, yeah? And therefore, even if for each person to eat, even for 1 person to eat each type is forbidden. Im ein shishim, if you don't have 60, because once it's liquefied and it's cooked together, now you need to nullify the flavor, even if the flavor doesn't exist. Because the Rabbanan, you have to nullify it. Yeah? So and the flavor is now transferred throughout all the pieces. Okay. But now back up a second. So you're just told that if it's cooked, you can't eat it. It's cooked all together. But now you have these 3 pieces. It's nullified. Daraisa and the Rabbanan, there's no problem right now. Because it's min, b'minoi, and it's batel b'roiv, and it's not cooked. It's not cooked together in liquid. So there's no isser right now. Not daraisa, not the Rabbanan. And v'roiv shel yachat. And you want to cook them all together. The ein shom samach, and you don't have 60. Because once you cook it, it's become also to eat. So right now it's mutter to eat. Says Shulchan Aruch, you can add more meat to make it 60 times and then cook it. And you aren't violating the injunction not to nullify an isser. Why? Because there was no isser. There was no isser before you cooked it. There's no isser after you cooked it. You prevented a rabbinic isser from being born, but you did not nullify an isser. Because had it been the way it is right now, even the Rabbanon, because it was min bin minoi yavash, which means if I wanted to, I could take in all those 3 pieces that are raw, let's say, grill them on the grill where it's not cooked together and eat them, no problem. So there was no isser. I can't recognize which one. It's not royal eskabed. I could have grilled those 3 slices and it would have been totally fine. Totally fine to eat. So because there was no isser, and there's not going to be an isser when I cook it, there is no mevatel isser lechatchila. I'm not violating the injunction of nullifying an isser. Because there's no isser in front of me. Okay.
How practical is this?
How practical is it?
I'm just curious. One example.
In your house, there should never be non-kosher food in there.
Yeah, I'm saying like, I don't know.
And that,
But it could in theory happen if your non-Jew brings in some food and it falls into something. It could happen in theory.
I mean, the question you're asking is on olive taruba. It's not just, you're asking it at this
Yeah.
point, but.
Look, this is more practical than coffee with specs steak. I could tell you.
Okay.
Okay, anyway, I
I'm just curious because, like,
it could happen in theory. It could
I
happen.
don't know. Because sometimes we learn something, and it's like, oh, it's not obvious, but there is an application for
Right.
it in another
I hear
in
you.
another sense.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I was just curious.
Maybe we'll get to halacha ma'aseh. We'll see, but I can't recall right now. Okay, let's finish this. If says the Shulchan Aruch, good morning, Aaron. Says the Ramah, v'yesh oimim, those that say it's a gewaldige din that
Dropped something in your food, it wasn't recognizable. Anyway, would you eat it?
No,
You wouldn't.
I would throw it out.
Okay, so,
well,
okay, so when you talk.
not necessarily should you.
Another
Not necessarily should you throw it away.
Exactly.
Not necessarily should you throw away.
You shouldn't.
And what happens if a Shabbos afternoon and you have guests and this is what you're going to serve them? You have to be
Okay,
worried.
but that's
Something fell into your salad. You made a chicken salad and your cleaning lady, a slice of chicken fell in there. Each piece of chicken isn't royally escabed. It's all dry and it's mixed all together. Can you serve that chicken salad?
based on what we
And you have no other food to serve your guest.
Right.
based on what we
I don't
learned.
know.
Yes.
Yeah. Right?
The solution is make sure that your cleaning lady knows never to bring food from the outside. My cleaning lady,
Of course.
you can eat all the food in my house. Don't bring any food. That's it.
And
Yeah.
other than that, and then one day you'll see a McDonald's
No.
trash can.
I've been,
Yeah, look, we all have the same thing. Just giving a theoretical. All right. Gimel.
Well, then.
So not Gimel. Continue the Ramah. Yesh oimim, those that say, here comes a gewaldige din from the Ramah. We had this once before, that your knowledge of something and your psak din creates the mitzvah, creates the reality. That once you know about something, that's when you start to treat it, halachically speaking. And before you know about it, whatever happened till then isn't relevant. We had this once before. Do I have to find out? Is the Rav required to ask, what did you do earlier? Or do you just judge based on what it is now? Do I have to ask, was there less than 60 earlier at a time? Remember that? And we were told, no, you don't have to. Because the halacha is determined based on how you see it. And the Ramah says a similar thing right now. Says the Ramah, Yeshayim knows to say, once you found out that one of these three pieces is not kosher, so now because you knew that and you applied the din of bittul b'roiv, daraisa d'rabbanan because min b'miniyat yavish, so the halacha determined that all three pieces are kosher. Hakol shari, everything's perfectly fine, and you don't have to add 60 to cook it. You can cook it as is, because the halacha was kadeya that it's bottled. If you didn't know about it, and you only found out after it was cooked, so the halacha never determined that this was batal, now you have a problem of tam ki'ikr. You need to have 60. Because you never knew about the isser before. So the halacha never had a chance to establish that this is kosher pieces of meat. But once you know about it, and you apply the halacha because you learned smicha, and you know that min b'mina yavish is batal b'raiv, you can go ahead and cook it because the Torah determined it's kosher. And therefore, the ein chayzim in a certain. We don't. It doesn't reawaken to become usher. Ma'achesh is battle the others because it's been nullified by your knowledge of your Allah. Makom hesed yeshit mechadivim akilim l'tahater.
Even if you didn't realize.
What?
That means even if you didn't realize.
No. If you did realize, then if you did realize, and you cooked it afterwards, and you didn't have 60 against it, then you could be makel if it has some merubah to rely on this shitta that says that once you know about it, you created the reality. I had a Rav once tell me this. It was a good moment to shimush for me. I had a shaila on a mara, on a bedika from a woman, and given the circumstances, the couple would have preferred that it was usher. Whatever the circumstances were, not nageya. Just talking to the Rav about it. And I said, Rav, look there, maybe, something's red over there. He looks and says, since we are now kaveya that this is red, it's usher for her, and she has to go do her thing and go to mikveh, etc., etc. And it's not because it wasn't red. It was. But it was a kind of red that the Rav, if he wanted to, could have made it heter. But the Rav it was a big teaching moment for me to understand that the Rav Paskas is kaveya the Metzias. The halachas see something and it's kaveya the Metzias. So it comes from this idea in the Ramah. You found out that there was mixture of davish b'yavish, and the halacha says it's kosher food now. You don't have to do anything else than bottle it later. The halacha is kaveya it's mutter. There's a very strong, powerful message here. Okay.
So why do you need the loss? Or what does the loss have to do with it? If you
Because
say
our shittas disagree in this case.
If you're saying lechatchila,
Because our
it's
shit-
okay,
Because our shittas that
because since you,
that agree with this, that disagree with this in this case. And in this case, they disagree. And because they disagree, he says only to rely on it, perhaps the Merubah. That's a machlekes in this particular case. But the idea that Allah has given the Metzias is important.
we're not accepting that the Ramah is saying lechatchila.
Say again?
We're saying that we're in doubt as whether the Ramah, whether it's really acceptable lechatchila. That it's identified, that it's batal b'rayv, as it's yavish b'yavish, and it's batal b'rayv.
He's saying that Makom Hefsed, you can rely on the shitta that says it's bottle by your establishment.
No, it's saying lechatchila, and even if you'll cook it, that's going to be fine. You don't need 60.
Correct. Then he goes on to say,
And-
Makom Hefsed,
And Makom Hefsed, so why do you need the Makom Hefsed in that case?
Because again, there's
lechatchila.
because there's a machlekes. It's only a yeshemer.
In other words, we don't accept. That's what I'm saying. We don't accept.
We do accept it. We're just being machmer. We do accept it. We're being machmer when we have no reason not to be machmer.
Machmir on something that lechatchila is okay.
Because it's a machlekes.
Machmir on something.
Not the first time we had this with his machlekes, where the Ramah says one opinion, and he seems to side with that opinion, but he says, be machmer, there's no big deal. That's the whole word of being machmer, makom shein hefsed. Because why not be machmer if you can be? Even though there's sure no reason to. Because you can be, why shouldn't you be? But as soon as there's a reason not to be machmer, don't be machmer.
Even if he's saying that
Yeah.
there's no reason to be machmir.
That's not uncommon. Right? Unless he says, chum ba'alma, like I said earlier. Right? Okay. Some practical things. Okay, this we spoke about. Okay, we spoke about this also, the shach, based on the Pri Megadim, that you have to have the majority of batul b'trei is not necessarily by two, but by the majority. Means even if you have two smaller pieces, right? But they equal total more than the bigger piece. It's fine, even though it's not two times the amount. Point is right. This is an interesting thing that the bittul b'roiv isn't even if all the pieces are right next to each other. But let's say you have, you have three pieces in the house. They're not like mixed in one bowl. You just have them all in your kitchen, and you don't know which one's which. That's also considered bittul b'roiv. Doesn't necessarily have to be mixed into one bowl, which I thought was an interesting
What
little
about in
factor.
your city?
Sorry?
What about in your city? It's
In the
your house.
city? Okay, then you're getting into kufiyut territory about if it's parish merubah, right? There's a majority of stores this way, the majority is that way. Is it kavua, not kavua? That's when you're getting into that sugya. But once it's in your house and you have the pieces there and you know one's not kosher, you know which one, that's considered bittul b'roiv. Okay. As the Shach says, the halacha, u'LeMaaseh, the halacha is that you should not eat all three pieces at once, but you can eat the majority at once and then a little bit later, as long as you can say in each bite that the food is somewhere else. Now, when you have yavish b'yavish, right? And you have, so, where are we? Once you have all 60, so if you had 1 against 3, then we just said that the din is like the more stringent opinion not to eat all 3 at once. Right? But if you have 60 and it's dry, so there are those that say for sure now it's nullified by 60, you can eat them all. But those are stringent that say that the heter to eat all of it when you have 60 nullifications only when it's cooked together and become one big liquid. And this seems to be the Alter opinion. That even then you shouldn't eat all of it at once. But even if it's yavish b'yavish, meaning the chumrah, not to eat all at once, yavish b'yavish is even when it's 60 to the amount. That's the shita. and not just when it's only 3 against 1. And that the heter to eat all 61 ounces is only when it's ounces, when it's liquid form. But if it's solid, you shouldn't even eat all of it together. So that way you
All
don't
at
come.
once means that it's such a small quantity that it fits on one spoon and
You eat it all at
that one
once, yes,
spoon all at
correct.
once. That's what it means.
That's pretty much what it means, practically speaking, correct.
Otherwise, because if it's this piece and that piece and the other piece, nobody eats it all at once. There's no way to stuff it in your mouth.
Fair point. But anyway, this seems that Rashita, that's why I wanted to share it. Now, we mentioned before there's this chumrah to throw away one piece. Now, we have 1 against 3, or 1 against 60 if you're following that shita. This chumrah comes from the fact that because we said a person is not supposed to eat all of them, according to that shita, which is one person shouldn't eat all. It should be different people eating them. If I'm alone, then I have to throw away one piece as if someone else is eating it. That's kind of where the chumrah comes from. And therefore, you'd have to throw away one piece before you started eating. And this,
So it's like if you had 3 people, you could eat all 3 pieces.
because you're giving it to one person, one piece to each.
One piece.
But if you're eating it alone,
So
and you're trying to be machmir according to the opinion which says that it should be different people,
Right.
so you're throwing away one,
Right.
right? So you're throwing away one before you start eating, as if like you gave it to the other person first, and then you're eating it. There's no other person, but you're throwing it away or giving it to the guy. And he puts in the footnote,
You can't give it to a Jew?
you could give it to a Jew.
Yeah.
So either all 3, either it's being eaten by other people,
You shouldn't give it away.
but if you're eating it alone,
You give it away.
you're throwing one away, right? So this seems to be out there as opinion. Sorry?
You have to give 2 away.
No, you only have to give one away.
One back.
So long as you could say the piece is non-kosher is away,
Yeah.
right? So every bite that I'm eating, I can say this is not the kosher one, not the treif one. So
And the one who eats the one piece, he
So it's
says.
he said the other guys will not eat not
So the
kosher.
other guy, he-
Yeah. Because again, that I said it's totally fine. It's all chumrah. Akapanim, even though the Ramah said this is only a chumrah, the Alter Rebbe seems to rule this is the way we should practice.
He agrees to that. One should be
It
rejected.
wants to be rejected, correct? That's the Alter Rebbe says that. Finally, made a few more dinim here actually. Can we explain that? Yeah. So we have this chumrah that min b'she'ena minoi, you should have 60 even before it's cooked together, lest you cook it together. Said the Shach, it says even in cases where it's not the kind of food that you would cook together. Because once the Gzeda is implemented, the yavish b'yavish, min b'she'ena minoi, make sure you have 60, lest you cook it. That Gzeda is there, even if it's not the kind of thing you're going to cook. It's important to know. Unless the non-kosher in there is the kind of thing that's going to ruin the rest of your cooking. Because it means even if you cook it, it's not going to be awesome.
Mhm.
So then you don't need 60. Because again, the whole point is you should be 2 steps away from deraisa. Right? Which means that if I end up cooking it, it's going to be a deraisa. That's true if it's min b'she'ena minoi,
Right.
and it's less than 60.
Right.
Then when I cook it, it's going to become deraisa. But if it's time of gam, then even if I do cook it, it's not going to become a deraisa. And therefore, if the usher is a davar poigen, then I wouldn't have to have 60 against it, because even if cooked, it wouldn't be a problem. Okay. The Ramah said that this chumrah is whether it's the Raisa or the Rabbanon, this chumrah of yavish b'yavish min b'she'ena minoi requires 60. Right? Doesn't make a difference if it's the Rabbanon the Raisa. But the Shach however says the Mekel if it's in the Rabbanon. Because the whole point of the Isser says Ramah, so the whole point of the Isser is that lest you cook it, it'll become an Isser Deraisa. But if it's an Isser Derabanan to begin with, even if I cook it, it's going to remain an Isser Derabanan. Right? The whole Gzera is if you end up cooking it, it'll be Deraisa because now you have Tam Kicker. Right? But if the Isser Derabanan to begin with, then even if I cook it, it's not going to become Deraisa. So it says the Shach, if it's Derabanan, you can be Mekel. Even though the Ramah said, makes a difference, it's Deraisa Derabanan. Okay? Okay. Another interesting thing is as follows. So we said like this. The Shulchan Aruch told us that if you have min b'minoi, yavish b'yavish, it's batal b'raiv, and you want to cook it now, and when you cook it, it's going to become Isur D'Rabbanan. Right now it's mutter, so you add to make it 60, and that when you cook, it's not going to be a problem. Another solution is if you take all 3 pieces and you cook them in different pots. So you retain the bittul b'raiv, because it's 1 against 1 and 3. and you never have a transference of flavor that would cause Issa D'Rabbanan, because each piece is in a different piece, is a different pot. So you do the same solution, just not all together, but
You
nullifying.
don't eat the three pots together.
And you would treat the three pots
You don't eat
the same way you
pots
treat the
together.
same pieces. Don't eat all three together, or throw one away, whichever, or give it to three different Jews, whichever opinion you're following in the previous din. But the same thing. This is the Shach explains, which I thought was very,
In other words,
which is very clever.
It's precedent that it's batul b'raiv and
no
that's the precedent.
flavor transfer happened.
Once we recognize that,
Okay. Remember, you have two things to take care of. You have to have bittul b'raiv and you have to have nullification of flavor. So your bittul b'raiv gets 1 and 3. It's min b'minah, you're allowed to do bittul b'raiv. You have no flavor transference, either because you added so much that it's 60 amount, or no flavor transference because they're three different things anyway.
flavor transference is only the rabbanan.
Correct, but you avoid that too. Either you avoid that, like the Shanoch said, by adding 60, or you avoid that by putting three different pots. So you're fine. Okay.
I mean, one of them though has like a trait flavor.
Say again?
You're saying there's a flavor transference, and then one of them has to have a different flavor.
No, because min b'minoi is exerted darabanan that you should nullify the flavor as if it transfers flavor. Right? Because if it's b'she'en minoi, then you have a daraisa problem tam kicker. And then therefore for sure you're more shmomachman. Right? Okay. So now the Ramah told us that if you know about the mixture, and if you establish that it's bottle, you don't have to add 60 to the amount to cook it, right? But then he said only in the place of hefsid should you rely on that heter. The Alter Rebbe, amongst others, say that hefsid here means hefsid meruba, and only with the evidence once you cooked it, not that you made a bottle and now go ahead and cook it.
It was just to add more of the
Correct.
permissible.
So the heter was A, you already cooked it, you forgot to add more when you knew about it before, and B, at least according to Alter Rebbe, is hefsid meruba, not just hefsid. Even though the Ramah only says hefsid.
And that would only be realized once it was served. For so long.
Yeah.
Still had, and
No, once it's cooked. Once it's cooked.
No, once it's cooked. But once it's cooked, you can cook it again. You could simply add more of the permissible and continue the cooking.
At that point, you'd have an issue of Hanan. It'd be much more complicated.
Is the pot going to be if you say it's Isser, is it a whole way Isser that the pot become Isser too, or is it only the food?
I wouldn't think the pot becomes Isser.
So we're not gonna cook it.
I don't think that would be considered. Maybe hefsid meruba. You have to decide if it's hefsid meruba. Ramah would sure say it's fine. Come hefsid. Does it constitute hefsid meruba? I don't know. Good question.
So 1 second.
If you're treating it as Isser,
added before the cooking, additional permissible because it's not.
Yes, for sure. It should be added before the cooking. If you're relying on the heter, you have to add it all.
Pardon?
If you're relying on the heter, you don't have to add it all. If you're relying on the Ramah,
You're relying on the stringency.
so you have to add 60 before. You have to add 60 before you're cooking.
So you need to have 60
Before you cook.
before you cook.
Correct.
So during the cooking, if you realize you're too late.
That'd be too late because the Isser's already spread throughout the whole thing. And then you run into an issue of Hanan,
Nice.
right? Okay. Unless you're relying, again, the Makam Hefsid / Hefsid Meruba,
Yeah.
you're saying, but yeah, but it's fine.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Because the whole thing was bottled the first time around. Okay. Obviously, even if you run the Heterim and you rely on Hefsid Meruba and everything else, if you identify which one's the problematic piece later, then obviously the whole bittel's gone because now you know which piece is there and you run back to the original thing, which you need 60 and the whole thing is awesome.
Clear.
Yeah. Okay, we already done for that. Okay. All right, if this we pretty much covered. Let's go to Kuf Yud. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we're not learning the whole Kuf Yud. We're just going to learn Sif Aleph, Beis, and Gimel, because that's what they translated in the booklet. I was just going to do Aleph and Beis, but they translated Gimel. We'll do Gimel also. Aleph and Beis is practical. I'm going to read it, translate it, give us the halacha u'LeMaaseh, and then we'll read and translate Gimel, and then we'll begin our Chazzarah for the test. So let's now read Kuf Yud. Din Safek Treifas She'ilu B'Basar, the laws regarding doubts of treifas that turn up in meat, and this contains 10 sif. The way the Shulchan Aruch combines halacha sometimes is beyond my comprehension. I don't know why these two sifim are put here. as I mentioned on Wednesday, the first two sifim was on the list of stuff that I never bought. Daria, Chatichir Liskabed, Dover Shish Matirin, Dover Amaimed, and now a new thing, Dover Choshev / Dover Shabaminion. So it could have been put in that list. For whatever reason, it's put here as an introduction to the rest of the sif, which is about Svekas. Again, I don't understand how this is structured. It's not really the Shulchan Aruch, it's the Torah who structured it that way, and the Kasha is really on the Torah why he structured his halachas in that particular fashion, which itself requires limud, especially I'm just throwing this out there just to know this. You sometimes find this in the Hardest of Yorim when the Alter Rebbe will restructure the siman, not the way it's structured in the Shulchan Aruch or the Torah. Move sifim around. He'll keep the same simonim. The Alter Rebbe will keep the same simonim, and he did so to make it easier for people to find where the halachas are. And once the Torah's structure has been accepted, to make it easier for people to find, you keep the same chapter numbers. So once you say a chapter number, you know to find it in Torah, Shulchan Aruch, Alter Rebbe, Mishnah Berurah. You're going to find it in all of them, right? And the ones who abrogated from that structure became less popular in Torah literature. For example, Aruch HaShulchan kept that structure too, at least for the most part. But Lavush, for example, others, they moved from the structure. So I don't understand my structure there, but as I is, I don't know.
So about the Rebbe holds all the same
Simonim orders, yes, but within the Simonim, we'll move sifim around. And sometimes in one siman, he'll bring up an issue from a different siman because he thinks it's relevant and go for a whole tangent about it that's not mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch of that siman, and then reiterate it in the next siman because it's there in the Shulchan Aruch. So the Alter Rebbe was creative in restructuring in many ways while still keeping the chapter numbers and titles for the most part from the previous Shulchan Aruch. And that's whole limit in itself. Okay. So Aleph, Davar Chashuv, something that is of importance. It's a valuable thing. Oiser b'minoi. What? No, it's not Eilis Kabit. Okay, not necessarily. So just to translate, okay, since you asked me to say this, the definition of Eilis Kabit is not mentioned exactly in the Shulchan Aruch, but in some places it's found as follows. The way he brings it from different Rishonim, where you have, let's say, a species, and within this class of species, this particular item is singled out as special. So it's a unique item in that species. And that's going to explain in the examples that the Shulchan Aruch have to give, which again come from the Gemara like we learned on Wednesday. Namely, so Davar Chashuv, this thing that's valuable, it's unique, it's special. Oiser b'minoi prohibits its own type, b'chol in the tiniest amount. Okay? He says it b'minoi, implying that if it's she'ein minoi, it would be nullified. Others disagree and say even Shach brings these opinions that even be'ein minoi would also never be nullified. But the Shulchan Aruch seems to be saying clearly that this fact that a davar chashuv is never nullified is only b'minoi. Even though, again, Shach and others disagree. Okay, so davar chashuv, a valuable, special thing, oiser b'minoi prohibits in its own type, b'chol shu, even at the smallest amount. And these special things are Zayin Dvarim, 7 things. And they are the following. Number 1, Egazei Perach, nuts that come from a place called Perach. So you see, this is why this classification is given. Nuts are not davar chashuv, but in the class of nuts imported from this place called Perach, that's a special thing. That's why they give this classification. Or things that are special in their own category. Likewise, Reimone Badan, the pomegranates from a place called Badan. Again, pomegranates aren't necessarily davar chashuv, but from Badan they're special. Closed, sealed barrels, they're always a davar chashuv, no matter where they come from. The chalfos kadim and beetroots. Don't know why these are singled out as chashuv. Guess that's the way it was back then in Eretz Yisrael. The kalche krov, cabbage stalk, glas yavonis, squash that comes from Greece specifically, Greek squash, kikodesh balabayas, and homemade loaves of bread. These are the things that are considered davar chashuv. A regular loaf of bread you get from a bakery, you can get in a dozen. It's easy. But homemade, that's special. You buy your neighbor's homemade sourdough. Oh, that's a unique item. If they happen to be not kosher.
How could they be not kosher?
It's Arla. It's Arla. It's Truma. I don't know. Likewise, Balei Chayin, living animals, chashuv mem are considered valuable. They ain't b'telim and never nullified, even the majority. Avashar dvarim, but other things, af b'shdakin l'nois, even though they are sold in number, meaning you sold them at each one is sold individually as a number, and you add one more, you get charged more. You don't get charged by weight or by volume. You get charged by item, so which seems to give it a certain value. Nonetheless, he passes like a Rakiva, and like the Chum, look, we spoke about on Wednesday, that those will be nullified. The only things that are not nullified are things that are chashuv, that have this special importance. Now, these seven. Now let's skip to Ramah for a minute and go continue the Shulchan Aruch, and we'll come back to Ramah in a minute. You'll see it's easier to read it that way.
You should have a question. Wednesday
About what?
about like chicken, like schnitzel and all that stuff.
Okay, let's see. It's going to come up. Let's see. Yeah. So continues the Shulchan Aruch. We're going to come back to Ramah in a minute. Call davar shu chashuv. It's a bnei hamakom anything which particular people at particular time, particular place consider valuable in the same way that people of Eretz Yisrael then considered the nuts of Perach and the pomegranates from Badon, who are prohibited in the tiniest amount, as they are considered important in that place, in that time. So it's not limited to these seven. It's anything that qualifies as those seven. So anything that in its category is of a special kind. So he gives here a couple examples.
In other words, it's extremely valuable.
It's valuable in its class. The nut is a nut, but it's a nut from. This particular nut is known as a special davar chashuv. Exactly. Correct. So he gives you examples. I don't know how we would translate in Canada. If I'm not mistaken, this rabbi, the author here, lives in Eretz Yisrael today. So I don't know if that translates to Canada, but let's just read his examples. A big salmon fish, I guess in Eretz Yisrael that's considered delicacy. A special bottle of wine, that for sure we would all agree. A hard cheese made of a certain type, right? There's all kinds of cheeses, but you get certain hard cheese, it's like a thing, right? Likewise,
$20,000 heritage cheese.
a special kind of yogurt, he gives an example. You're getting a certain class type of yogurt, it's an example he gives. And then he gives a special kind of clothing, like you bought a special suit from somewhere. Like if it had shatnez, it wouldn't be bottled, for example, because it's a special kind of suit. Those are the examples he gives, which I understand, and I don't think schnitzel will count. But in terms of davar sheb'minyan, I don't think it'll count either. We'll see in a second.
I was curious because because I'm saying like this is what we buy by the weight, they're not individually.
Say again?
We buy by the weight, they're not individually.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So let's see in a minute. Yeah. Okay, continue the Shulchan Aruch. Sorry?
What did you say?
We were talking about like schnitzel, like you go to any of these.
You don't buy them by piece, you buy them by weight.
Say how many pieces you want, but when they put it on the scale, they're weighing the weight.
Right.
There's a kilogram amount.
Right.
They wrap it.
We're going to see in a second. That's correct.
So that's not a davar chashuv?
No, it's the same. It's not individual.
That's not considered davar sheb'minyan. Okay, the chashuv is one thing, then davar sheb'minyan is something else. So davar chashuv, it's for sure not, unless it's a certain kind of chicken. I'll give you a modern example of that. Bluefin tuna would be an example of that. A davar chashuv. There's tuna.
Right.
And then you tell someone, oh, I got bluefin tuna. Right? I got Wagyu beef. So it's beef, but then I got Wagyu beef. That's a davar chashuv.
Right. Expensive, rare. You're not going to eat it all the time.
Yeah, even if it's not expensive, even if it wasn't expensive, yes, it's going to be expensive automatically.
Exactly.
But in its class, it's a particular kind.
It's top quality.
It's top quality in its class.
Top quality
In its class. So I'm giving very expensive examples, but you think of other cheaper exampple.
No, and that beef or tuna, whatever, is the part that's not.
If it happens to be non kosher, and Wagyu could be non kosher, right? So that would never be bottled, even though it's tiny amount and it's not royal escabit because it's too thin. But it's not going to be bottled because it's davar chashuv.
Yeah.
That's right. Diminoi and other pieces of meat, according to the Shulchan Aruch and according to everybody else, even b'shein minoi, it would never be bottled because it's a special class of meat. Right? There would be an example. Okay. Okay. Even if it's sorry,
We don't have that for.
I'm trying to think of other examples. You could think of certain fruits that are like that. Like there's rare fruits,
Okay.
certain kind of orange that's unique,
Okay.
or
But like, you only have like nuts and all that kind of stuff. This doesn't really
you have to
exist.
think. Actually, I read his example.
Figs. There's like special figs.
Wine is definitely a thing.
But I know like I'm saying there's like rare figs like royal orchards and stuff that are like.
Sure. Today, there's all kinds of things in oil. Every class now has its fancy levels.
Well, I don't understand, what's the difference in how we're gonna judge it? How we're gonna pass
It's not
it
bottle.
when it comes between Dover Choshev and Roy Luskabi?
They're both the same thing, but Royal Escabed is Royal Escabed could be even Royal Escabed is really sized to a degree.
But it can't be nullified.
Correct, they both can't be nullified.
Both-
But the piece of wagyu could be tiny.
Yeah.
The piece of wagyu could be a tiny strip.
Not a deal.
The piece of wagyu could be a tiny strip.
My finger.
Yeah.
A piece the size of my finger, which is we would never serve this to a guest.
But
Okay,
it's-
okay, it's only, you're talking only in the side.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
Davar Chashov is not bottle, even if it's not Royal Escabed.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I just want to understand how we.
Correct. So the minute steak,
Same way.
the minute steak is Royal Escabed.
The difference is that double choshev could be something tiny. A royal escabed
Has
could
to
never be
correct.
something tiny.
No,
That's
correct.
something-
So the minute-
it's not itself.
correct.
Therefore, a tiny thing is not itself.
The minute steak is the cheapest kind of steak,
Yeah.
Right,
but it's Royal Escabed.
right.
Slice it up into thin strips. It's not Royal Escabed anymore. It's bottle. The piece of wagyu, the highest level meat now, thin strip, tiny, never going to serve it to anybody. Not bottle because Davar Chashuv.
One pomegranate,
That's also
but then.
because it's never- You would serve it to somebody.
That tiny depends how big.
You would serve someone when you buy an appetizer, wagyu appetizer.
Yes.
You have 3 or 4
But there's-
pieces of the tiniest
There's still a
one.
threshold of what you wouldn't serve.
Okay, fine.
There's still a threshold of tiny amount you wouldn't serve, and below that threshold, it's still Davar Chashuv.
Whereas if you had one pomegranate of badan, you're done.
Correct.
Right, one seed, yeah.
One pomegranate from Badan and you
seed,
not bottle.
Pomegranate. of badan.
Correct.
But
A place where special pomegranates used to come from back in the day. Okay. Continues that Shulchan Aruch.
That's-
Okay, let's continue the Shulchan Aruch.
Yeah.
Continues the Shulchan Aruch. V'lo huskaru elu. These 7 items are only listed, even though they're a budget. Shulchan Aruch just finished saying that the Davar Chashuv is dependent on the culture of each time and place. But so why are these 7 listed? These 7 items are always never nullified because they were established at the time as Davar Chashuv. They never lose their status as Davar Chashuv. So if you buy squash from Greece, never nullified if somehow that squash was unkosher. Maybe because of kalayim or something. No, then it wouldn't be also to eat anyway. I don't know how the squash would become not
This is the Ramah?
kosher. No, the Shulchan Aruch, still the Shulchan Aruch. Concluding the Shulchan Aruch. Concluding the Shulchan Aruch, last 2 lines. But the same thing applies to other things like it in other places and times. Okay, now let's go to the Ramah. Now goes the Ramah. The Ramah does not disagree with the Shulchan Aruch. He agrees with the Shulchan Aruch. The Davar Chashuv is not going to be nullified, but he's adding. There are those that say, as opposed to the Ramah Mechaber, who said that only a Davar Chashuv is not bottle. If something is not Chashuv, even though it's the kind of thing which is sold individually in number, said the Mechaber it's bottle. But says the Ramah, those that say the whole Davar Shebiminion, anything that's considered a thing that's sold in counting, the Hainu meaning, Shadarka Limnai say Tamid. It's always sold in number. Ain't a bottle, it's not nullified.
Never.
What's with eggs? So actually the funny thing is, if you look at the Shach on the left, and if you look at Shach number 10, he points to a Gemara which says that eggs is not considered sold in number. Because it used to be.
These days.
Hold on. He quotes a Gemara which says that eggs are not considered Davar Shebiminion because they used to sell eggs by the basket. But says the Shach, that's a technicality. That's the way it was back then. But today you would definitely buy eggs by number, and that holds true till this very day. You never buy eggs in approximation. You buy a number, right?
But
If
you
bought
bought it in
a
a basket, there was a predetermined amount of eggs in the basket.
Correct.
Otherwise, they're
So,
losing money, so they
not in the old day,
wouldn't
not
sell you,
necessarily in the old day. You wouldn't necessarily count each egg in particular.
why not?
That's the way it was back then. In the same way, you get a bag of. In the same way, you got a bag
It
of.
doesn't make sense because each egg is worth money, and
They're great.
in those days, farming was everything. So if you
This is
gave
the Metzias.
extra eggs, you were giving away your
Look,
money. It doesn't.
We're arguing on the Metzias. This is the reality. You can't argue the reality. This is the reality. The reality then was this is what the Gemara says that they didn't count eggs at a time. It was in a basket. But today, says the Shach, and certainly today, modern day, not 2026, eggs are sold in number.
Right.
Okay. The Again, this is the custom, says the Ramah. Continue the Ramah. Now, hard to the Chashuv in a bottle. This fact that something which is of importance for Davar Shebiminion is not nullified. Ain't an element of Rabbanim. It's only a rabbinic thing. And we go lenient when there's a doubt. What kind of doubt? Which kind of doubt here? A doubt as to whether or not it's considered chashuv. If it's doubt whether it's considered chashuv, we go lenient. But if it's a doubt, let's say that if it's usher or not, then if it's that I said we already established it's usher, it's a davar chashiv, it's not going to be nullified. So the doubt that Ramah is talking about here is specifically the doubt of, I don't know if it's davar chashiv. Then I go lenient.
Right. So, but 1 second, according to the Ramah, whatever is counted is Chashiv.
Correct. So the item, you're not sure if it's still been counted or not. Let's just say. No, first of all, the Ramah also is of the view that, again, he doesn't argue with the Shulchan Aruch that davar chashiv is not batal. He agrees davar chashiv is batal. He's adding that also davar minyan is not batal. And now he's commenting on the law of davar chashiv.
1 second, davar chashiv is not batal, right?
Is not batal.
Right.
And the Ramah agrees with that. The Ramah is adding that davar minyan is also not batal.
Right.
So you have two more things in the list that are not batal. Davar chashiv and davar minyan. Now the Ramah is saying that you should know this issue of davar chashiv not being batal is a drabanan. And therefore, if you're a suffix, you're not sure if the piece of meat is davar chashiv, go lenient. Okay. Practical things that come from, okay, let's learn this base first. Baalei Chayim, it's a very just simple din. Baalei Chayim, living animals, which were mixed into others, and all of them were shechted by mistake. One of them was a treifel, let's say. And we said before that living animals are davar chashiv and not nullified. But now that they're all shechted, batal chashivusam. Their chashiva status has been nullified. It's gone. They're nullified in the majority. So long as it was shechted accidentally, you didn't know the issa was there. Because if you did, you're not a mivatal issa lechatchila. Continue the Ramah explains the dafka specifically baalei chayim tanim, small animals she'enam royal miskabed that are not royal miskabed. Because if it was royal miskabed, it's not batal anyway, both before death and after death. Before death, it's not batal because it's davar chashiv, and after death, it's not batal because it's royal miskabed. But if it was not royal miskabed, which means before death it was not batal because it's davar chashiv, it's alive. After death, accidentally shechted, it's no longer davar chashiv, no longer davar miskabed, then it is batal. Okay. Not a very relevant din for us who aren't owning farms. Okay, now, we remember from Wednesday, this is very important. Okay, the other things we mentioned already. First of all, you should know, interesting. Okay, we already mentioned that even though the Shulchan Aruch says only b'minoi, it's not batal. The majority of poskim, including the Shach, say that even be'enim minoi, it's not batal. Number one. Number two, davar chashuv, which is aser b'hana, it's possible davar chashuv, and it falls into a mixture. It's not batal. Everything becomes aser b'hana. That's how far it goes. And you couldn't even sell it to a guy unless you sold it to the guy minus the value of that piece. In which case you had no hana from that davar chashuv, which is not batal. Right? We had that idea earlier as well. Okay, we mentioned on Wednesday there was 3 opinions.
Where did we get that?
Sorry.
Where did we get that? That's where is that?
Let's say it happens to be asabana.
Huh?
It's possible it happens to be asabana. There are certainly certain that are asabana. Chametz on Pesach.
No, but it's not possible. You're talking about possible.
He's talking about any isser, right?
Right.
So if the isser that fell in happens to be a piece of basbachalav,
Okay, yeah.
so it's a piece of wagyu it's a piece of wagyu. It's kosher wagyu that absorbed cheese, and it fell into a piece. It's davar chashuv. It's asabana. Everything's asabana. Okay. Remember on Wednesday we had 3 different opinions. One opinion, which was the Shulchan Aruch's opinion, which said that davar minyan is batal, because only davar chashuv is only davar chashuv. Opinion 2, which the Ramah says only something which is always sold in number is not batal. And the Marshal, which learned, like the other opinion in the Gemara, maybe 2 opinions in the Gemara, Es Shadarkai, Kol Shadarkai. The third opinion is that even if it's sometimes sold in number, it's also not batal. Now, Shach and the Taz rule to be machmer like the Marshal, that even something which is sometimes sold in number, also not batal. Unless it's hefsim merubah. The Sfardim, however, they rely on the Shulchan Aruch, davar shebeminyan is batal, period. Okay. Now, even to your question, even things that are sold that are very expensive, right? So it's expensive meat, but if it's sold by weight, not by number, it's not considered davar shebeminyan. Because it might be an issue of chatichar l'skabit, right?
So why
but the class of davar shebeminyan, it's still davar shebeminyan. No, because wagyu would be a davar chashuv, not davar shebeminyan. Right? There are 3 different things here: davar chashuv, chatichar l'skabit, davar shebeminyan. You have to know which one it falls into. So Minute steak is going to be in Chater Cholos Kabit. Wagyu is going to be Dor Choshev. Eggs will be Dor Minion.
Okay, so is it like a high?
Three different classes.
Is it a spice sold by the single? And is it with?
Chater Cholos Kabit.
Just, okay.
And
it's a big enough.
And we're
size.
machmer
Alright.
that even if it's sometimes sold a number, it would still be considered Dor Minion. That's not butter. And therefore, eggs, as I mentioned, a loaf of bread, challah, even a Danish.
I've always sold that number.
Challah always sold a number, but let's say Danishes. You can, let's say you go to Cheskes, you can buy Danishes by weight, or you can say, give me 5. It's sometimes sold this way, sometimes sold that way. It's going to be Dor Minion. Right? He says here, which is interesting, I thought was a cool one, a slice of pizza is also sold by number. Give me 2 slices. Right? Likewise, the matzah that's made baked on Erev Pesach. Because matzah generally is sold by the pound. The matzah Erev Pesach sold by a piece. And let's say they, God forbid, forgot to remove the challah. And all those pieces of matzah are usher. Okay, that they would be able to take challah after. I don't know how this would become usher. Let's say they found that was made from kemach chadash, not kemach yashan. I don't know. So it wouldn't be butter. Okay, even though sometimes certain hot dogs are sold individually. Okay. We have a few more minutes just to read Gimel and translate Gimel because it's in there. Yeah, let's read quickly Gimel. It should take 5 minutes. It's a principle we explained on Wednesday, but we're here. Let's conclude it. Gimel. Hes Chanoyes. 9 stores. Moiches Basar Shchuta. They sell kosher meat. V'achas Mecheres Nevela, and 1 sells non-kosher meat. V'lokach ma'achas men, and you bought meat from one of the 10 stores. Then you do mezon lokach. You don't know which meat, you know which store you bought it from. Harei za'aser, it is forbidden. Even though the majority of stores is kosher, but because the suffix was born not outside the store, the suffix was born inside the stores, because I don't know which store I went to. That's where the suffix is born. And all those stores are stationary, they're not mixed together. And therefore, whenever the doubt is born in stationary items that are not mixed, we treat it as 50-50, and therefore the meat is not kosher. But if the meat is found on the floor of the market, or found in a guy's hand, mutter, it's permitted, because now where's the suffix born? Not in the stores, it's born on the piece of meat on the floor. And once the suffix is born outside the mixture, and because now most of the stores are kosher, to call the parish, whatever is extracted, we treat it as if it was extracted from the majority. That's only if the doubt is born outside the mixture. If the doubt is born inside the mixture, and the mixture isn't the mixture, everything is set in its place, distinct from the other, we treat it as 50-50. So when I'm walking around with the meat, the doubt is not born in my hand, the doubt is born in the stores are stationary, 50-50, meat non-kosher. If I find the meat on the floor, so the doubt is born outside the stores, I assume that it came from the majority. Zeudin Torah, this is the law by biblical command. Our sages said the piece of meat is forbidden. And this would be even if everything was kosher, even if all 10 stores were kosher. You find meat on the floor is not kosher. Can't eat it. Why? Says the Ramah, go see earlier chapter 63. But there we talk about the law of davar, basar, and element ayin. Our sages forbade meat that has been the watchful eye has been removed from that piece of meat, which is where the idea comes of having a double wrap with a seal on it. And if it's not watched, we don't eat it anymore. So when you get your Uber Eats delivery, you got to make sure that MK sticker is there. MK sticker is ripped, you may not eat that food. It's considered basar and element ayin. It's a little halacha people should know.
Because you left the money you left the food with a guy. So during that time that it was
anytime meat was left unwatched, comes awesome.
Remember a story about that with
the whole thing, even in your own house,
right?
In your fridge. Look,
So in the airplane.
So you have a cleaning lady who lives in your house.
That's why it has to come sealed when they give it to you.
You're telling me that all your
okay, depends on the degree of if you're out of town, might be a problem.
First of all, there's a tray.
You know you're out of town.
Triple wrapped in an oven.
Might be a problem.
Oh, it's
First
just
of all,
saying if you're out,
there's a
you're out of the house,
and the
you come back
tray
at any
itself is
single
wrapped.
moment, so
And
you'd be
inside the
scared to
tray-
do something.
Might be.
Yeah.
Not our subject right now, but that might be.
Yeah, you're upstairs in your house.
So first they bring it to you.
Correct.
Your dishes.
Bring
Well,
it.
that's fine.
Okay,
They say, can I open the opening?
That's right.
Can they take it apart?
Yeah,
Correct.
in front of you, they can.
So you see that the
Correct.
whole thing. was
and
sealed
in many cases,
in
what they're-
totality.
Exactly.
in many
Then
cases,
they're taking out
Right.
the little tray.
and in many
with
cases,
the- in
you
order-
rewrap it. In many airliner things, they give it to you to open. So this halacha, right?
Right.
And then if you look in the thing, there's a little plastic bag with a tie wrap for you to put it into and double wrap it and give it back to them to reheat.
No, they come heated already.
Not,
In
all,
other
not,
words,
not always.
always. I mean, I fly all the.
So I'm telling you, sometimes I have experience. They come to me with a cold. And they say, "Can you open it?" You open it. You take out the part supposed to be reheated. You put it into its plastic case with the zip tie and give it back to them to reheat. I've had that experience. So that was very cool. But some cases, it's already double wrapped before.
No, allows all kosher.
No, or allow would be kosher to begin with. But
Elal's not. You have to ask for Mahadran if you're flying Elal.
that's for sure. That's true. That's for sure. But I had the other experience also where to begin with it was double wrapped and came to me hot. But yes, you have to open in front of you.
Oh, but what happens if you go wash your hands and you forgot that you put you open the salami sandwich and then you go wash your hands in a minute in the bathroom? And
You shouldn't be washing your hands in the bathroom. But
no,
when
when you're on the plane, you have no choice.
you went away for a minute,
What? Yeah.
we're not learning
Think
it.
about that situation.
I don't know. I'm not answering because I'm not learning Simcha Gimel right now. I don't know.
Another time.
I have to look up Simcha Gimel. Okay, let's continue. Let's conclude the Ramah. This idea that we say that whenever something's extracted from the majority, whenever something's extracted, so the doubt is born outside the mixture. We treat it as if it came from the majority, and in this case, it would be mutter because the majority stores are kosher. That is, if we don't see it coming out, we only see it here on the floor, and therefore the doubt is born here outside. But if the thing is moving towards us and we see it coming out of the mixture, and now I see a guy buying it. It's as if I myself carried it out. Because now the doubt again is born not outside, but inside. And once the doubt is born in the mixture, and because the mixture is stationary, not intermingle with each other, it's considered 50-50 and is bottom. And therefore it's usher because we treat it 50-50 as opposed to roiv. Okay, that's the basic idea, which again is never going to be practical for us because we're not doing this, but at least we got the concept. Right, have a good, wonderful weekend, and we're going to post the schedule for testings and everything else for our coming up learning. Wonderful day.
So
Yeah.
I would